Welcome to our discussion on boundaries. Today we're diving into how setting personal boundaries can empower you and protect your well-being.
I'm excited to jump in. Boundaries are basically like fences, right? They're like, well, demarcations between what we allow and what we don't.
Exactly. Think of it as, our skin is a boundary between our organs and the
hmm
outside world, just like a fence separates properties. It's that clear line where one thing ends and another begins.
Right. And these boundaries protect us from things like unwanted comments, emotional dumping, or even commitments we just can't handle.
Yes, absolutely. Boundaries are all about honoring what works for us and letting go of what doesn't. They help us control our own responses in situations since we can't really control what others do.
It's more about controlling our own behavior rather than trying to change someone else's actions, isn't it?
Correct, exactly. It's not about expecting people to change their behavior. When we set boundaries, we're modifying how we interact and what we allow into our space. It's like a shield protecting our mental and emotional energy.
That makes sense. And what about the difference between boundaries and requests? Because sometimes I notice people confuse the two.
Great point. With requests, we're asking someone to change, a collaborative effort where both parties are involved. But setting a boundary isn't about asking them to change, it's about deciding for ourselves. For instance, saying no, or I can't do that, is about preserving our
Yeah.
own space.
So, in essence, a request invites someone to act differently, while a boundary is an internal adjustment we make. Got it.
Exactly. And there are, a few different communication styles when it comes to boundaries. We've got the short and sweet approach, the I statement approach, radical transparency, and even the speaking up approach.
Let's talk about the short and sweet one first. I find simplicity really appealing. Sometimes just saying, no thank you, or not today, is all that's needed, right?
Definitely. It's straightforward and protects us without a lot of back and forth.
hmm
It works wonders in situations like, say, a sudden request that just doesn't fit into our schedule.
And then there's the I statement approach, which sounds a bit more detailed.
Yes, the I statement is really useful because it frames our feelings and needs directly. For example, I feel overwhelmed when you, start a conversation without giving me space because I need time to process my thoughts. It leaves little room for misinterpretation.
That definitely seems to encourage clarity. But how does radical transparency fit in here, especially when not every relationship might be ready for that level of openness?
Right, and that's a great observation. Radical transparency is about being completely honest about your feelings and limits, but you, really want to use it only with people you trust. It's powerful, but should be applied
Yeah,
cautiously.
I can see that. It's like you need to ensure that the person on the other end won't weaponize that vulnerability.
Exactly. Moving on, there's also the speaking up approach, which is more proactive in asserting our beliefs. It's useful when someone's values or behaviors just aren't aligning with what we agree with.
So that's when you say something like, I disagree, or I find that hurtful, right?
Precisely. It's a way to, insert a mental boundary that separates what they claim from what you believe. This method is a bit more direct.
I'd uh, challenge that a bit, though. Don't you think that sometimes speaking up too directly might escalate the conflict instead of helping?
That's a valid concern. And sure, speaking up does carry a risk of escalating conflict if not done with care. But it's important to, express our boundaries clearly rather than internalizing our feelings. It ultimately fosters mutual respect.
hmm I see what you mean. It's a balance between self-advocacy and ensuring you're not igniting unnecessary tension.
Yes, exactly. Another key aspect of boundaries is not just communicating them, but enacting them. If we say we won't engage in gossip, we have to actually, step away from that conversation.
That's crucial. It's like if you tell someone you don't have time for an activity, you really need to let that phone go to voicemail or exit the room when it happens.
Right on. Boundaries are only effective when we follow through. Otherwise, they become just words with no power.
So let me get this straight. Boundaries are fundamentally about protecting our mental and emotional space and are, well, about our own behavior rather than changing others.
Absolutely. And that brings us to disengaging as a means of boundary setting. Sometimes, when we repeatedly face behaviors that are harmful, disengaging can be a very powerful, self-affirming act.
Yeah, like if someone keeps making judgmental comments instead of fighting or trying to change them, you simply remove yourself from the interaction.
Exactly. There's a big difference between disengaging out of fear, which is people-pleasing, and disengaging as an empowered choice to protect yourself.
And it's interesting because disengaging as a boundary is a sign that you value your own peace over someone else's need to debate constantly.
Right. It's power-based. It's about saying, I won't dignify this behavior with my participation. And that can ultimately save us a lot of emotional energy.
I love how this approach shifts the focus inward. Instead of controlling what others do, we concentrate on what we do, like letting go of unhelpful interactions.
Exactly. And these ideas are put into action through various strategies. There are both short-term ones, like saying no, and long-term ones, like reducing daily exposure to negativity, or even leaving toxic relationships entirely.
Speaking of toxic, sometimes people might say that boundaries create distance in relationships. Have you noticed that critique often comes up?
Yes, I have. Some argue that boundaries lead to emotional walls, but really, they enable healthier connections by defining what's acceptable for us. Without boundaries, we might end up feeling overwhelmed or taken advantage of.
That's a good point. It's like boundaries preserve the quality of the relationship rather than diminish it.
Exactly, and they ensure that discussions and interactions remain respectful. Boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about making sure you're comfortable and respected in every relationship.
I think that's a really empowering way to look at it. Boundaries help reclaim our power in relationships.
Indeed, and it's fascinating how these strategies, from the short and sweet approach to radical transparency, offer us a range of tools for different situations.
It shows that there's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to personal boundaries. You can pick what works best depending on who you're interacting with and what the situation demands.
Right. And sometimes it's even about using a combination of techniques. For example, the I statement might be paired with disengaging when conversations turn toxic.
Yeah, that's a great combo. It reminds me of an analogy. It's like having multiple defenses in a video game. A shield here, a dodge there, so you're always protected in varying ways.
Exactly. It's like stacking up defenses to best protect your well-being, and these defenses create space for healthier interactions.
And when boundaries are consistently respected, it builds trust. But what happens when someone continually pushes back against your limits?
That's when ultimately you might have to adjust the relationship dynamics. If someone repeatedly violates your boundaries, you have the power to, decrease the level of intimacy or even walk away entirely.
True, and that's often one of the toughest decisions because it means sacrificing a relationship for your own mental health.
Yep, but it's a necessary step. It's about affirming, I can't control your actions, but I control my own space and energy. And that assertion is liberating.
I like how this perspective shifts the focus to self-care and integrity rather than forcing someone to change.
Absolutely. Ultimately, boundaries reinforce that our personal limits define us, and that self-respect comes first.
And in practice, these techniques, whether it's a brief no or an honest, sometimes tough conversation, can make all the difference in our daily lives.
Exactly. They're actionable steps, whether it's just saying, not today when overwhelmed, or using an I statement to express your feelings in a heated moment.
Yeah, it really brings to light how setting boundaries isn't about being antisocial. It's about, carving out a space where you thrive and are respected.
Right? It's more about self-preservation and nurturing healthier interactions. And in a world full of external pressures, reclaiming that power is vital.
Truly. I think these insights encourage us to reassess our own boundaries and see where we can improve. It's an ongoing process, isn't it?
Exactly. It's an evolving practice. Boundaries today may need adjustment tomorrow depending on our situations, but the single truth remains. They are crucial for our well-being.
And they remind us that our time, energy, and emotional space are incredibly precious.
Absolutely. So whether you're using the quick no approach or a more in-depth conversation, know that these boundaries help build a healthy life and relationships.
Thanks for this engaging chat. It's definitely given me a lot to think about regarding self-advocacy and personal empowerment.
Thank you too. It's been energizing to explore these ideas. Remember, boundaries are your power in taking control of your environment.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep protecting your space and let your true self shine through.